Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, hanging out these nerds.
Nathan Nerdarchy.
Nerdarchy Ryan.
And today we're going to go over 3 reasons why your character doesn't know that. Jump down the description below where you can find Nerdarchy, the newsletter, game weekly tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy. So we had a couple of videos that kind of lead to this video, right? We did one...
It all came down to this.
It all came down to this. We did one video basically with dragons and wizards, why your castle is useless. We had asked the question. We had also did another one talking about the gaming experience versus experiencing the game. So a lot of different things had come up. Mike Gould weighed in on a bunch of things. Boris Stremlin, a bunch of other people.
Ranger Roy, yeah, amongst others. Yeah.
Amongst others. And so the gist of it is, what does your character actually know? Even like during that one video, me and Ryan kind of disagreed on some things. And that just is like how much a character will know. Because you can't really equate your player character's knowledge to the vastness that we have today.
Right, yeah.
And intelligence doesn't necessarily mean that you utilize that intelligence. So if you have a high intelligence, it doesn't mean it's all full of a whole bunch of things that nowadays people just learn in school.
Well, you don't have access to information the way you do now.
So limit on access.
So there's 3 factors we're going to look at, right? So we're going to look at literacy, the transmission of information, and travel.
Right.
Essentially.
All those are important. So like, in many cultures, like way back when, if we're talking about the pseudo-medieval period, most people weren't literate. So it's kind of special that it's assumed that your adventurer is literate, right? Like that's a very, I mean, if you go into Dark Sun, like, I mean, if you're playing a pure version of that game, like everyone but a few characters are illiterate in that game world.
Don't you have to take, you had to take...
Yeah, in old versions, right? You had to choose, take literacy, like you expended resources to be literate in that game.
It was a proficiency.
Unless you were a Templar or a wizard.
Yeah, and I was looking at some information, it was like, you know, it was, you can safely say like 20% or less. If you're not talking about the Renaissance, but before that, like medieval Europe, period, like 1,000 to 1,300, you're looking at like 20% max.
No, you know, forget about that, right? Even if you were happen to be literate, right? Someone taught you letters, the chances are that you actually had things to read are even more rare because there wasn't a printing press. You didn't have the internet. Yeah. You couldn't just type something out and hit print.
Some mofo had to hand copy another book that was there. Oh, go ahead.
Like, they started religions just so they could put a bunch of monks in a room with books copying them.
But like, do this. Well, they chained books to the shelves and stuff. Like, you weren't walking away with that sucker.
Yeah.
Or they chained, or they kind of like imprisoned you while you were reading stuff and looking at stuff.
I don't know.
Because books were super valuable, yeah.
I don't know if you guys seen the new Doctor Strange movie, but like they had a bit of that in the movie where the books were like in cages on the walls and shit. Yeah.
So it's just like that. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, pre-printing press, like unless you're saying that there's a lot of magical capabilities to reproduce stuff, like a Eberron world where you just have copy spells going left and right.
Unseen Servant might be able to get some stuff done.
Like, unless you're playing with a super high magic world, high fantasy world, it's going to be, your access to information is going to suck because only the most privileged people had access to books en masse, or they made their entire career and life about being around books, which your average adventurer, like, well, they're out adventuring. They're not, like, sitting there poring over tomes all the time. A wizard's sure, but it's a very specific thing of the arcane arts of learning magic.
Yeah.
Now, Mike Gould had given me and Ted a little bit of a hard time in our castle video. Yeah. And obviously, we do videos for information, but also to be entertaining, right? And you know, he brought up the very relevant fact that adventurers are not commonplace, dragons aren't commonplace, magic's not commonplace, wizards aren't commonplace. Because if they were, it would change everything. And he goes as far as to describe the world. Like, the adventurers would be literally sole survivors in a post-apocalyptic world. You know, if everyone could know all the things that some people think they should know as an adventuring. Yeah. But, you know, so we like to take things so extreme sometimes and go, well, what would happen if a dragon comes against a castle? Well, would it make it useless? Well, yes, it would. But what doesn't make it useless is the fact that there's not a ton of castles around. Yeah. You know, the same thing someone had said, you know, they brought up a good point. Like, if you live in a village near a swamp, and over the generations it's been attacked by trolls. So what you've learned as a villager is if you use fire, you can drive off the trolls. that's fine. That would be a fact to their lifestyle, and they would understand that because that's what they've been exposed to. But if they had to deal with different monsters, they probably wouldn't know what to do, especially if it's the first time. It'd be rare circumstances. And if they did, again, it goes back to the Mike Gould post-apocalyptic situation of no one will be left in that village if they're constantly being bombarded by monsters and magic.
The situation, and also too, like civilization and like bands of humanity staying together, like they drive off monsters. So like everybody's staying in a very safe centric area is going to keep things safe, and threats usually pick on the outliers or the wagons that come through, and that's why staying where the fuck you grew up is safe, and behind walls is safer yet.
Well, and it also goes further to the idea of disinformation, right? Because you're going to get it from those few survivors. That, you know, the guy that didn't get eaten by the troll, but he got away, how much is he really going to know?
Yeah.
You know, when he comes back and he's hysterical, was he in shock? And then, you know, if that...
The troll was like 25 feet tall. And...
Yeah, by the time it's done.
Yeah.
Never mind, I'm not going to go into the George Washington video.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then not only that is like, you know, it's like you said before too, the whispers down the lane, he retells the tale to somebody, and if someone does finally write it down, who's to say it's actually the right information, and then it's in one book somewhere, unless that book gets, you know, recopied by hand.
By hand.
Yeah, if you don't have very strict oral tradition in your culture, people are going to embellish stories to make it more interesting.
I feel like even if you do...
In the retelling, it's still going to change.
It's still going to change. Maybe, like, there might be, like, a tradition, like, say you have a professional of you know, someone, orator who does that in that civilization, and they do it better. But even still, it's still going to change a little bit. What artist doesn't, like, want to put their stamp on something?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, look at the X-Men movies, which were based off of really good comic books, and they made shitty movies because someone needed to put their artistic stamp on it. Now, it's just like that.
Just like that.
Minus the mutants. So that is two areas where things are going to be greatly affected. And that is, like we said, you know, there isn't writing about this stuff for people to learn.
Or commonly accessible, yeah.
And, you know, if you're in a hamlet or a village, there might be, like, one book, you know, in the whole town. Or one person might have a library, and he's, like, the richest person.
And that book's probably about crops, like the things that are most...
taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then it's like, you know, most of the people can't read those books anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. And then the third thing that we mentioned was travel. People don't travel nearly as much as you think, and especially in medieval times. Even in this day and age, how many times can you find people that have never really left their state?
Right.
No, you're probably...
It's probably less so in this day and age, but...
It is, but you're not going to find someone that hasn't left their town. You'd be really hard pressed. But there is people that will live in a state and never leave it. You know, I've traveled out of the country only twice in my life, and we have access to airplanes. They had a horse if they were lucky, you know, that they could ride. That's a huge difference. So how far are people going to really range?
And there wasn't, and not all the time there's even going to be roads to get you to where you want to go or need to go. Perhaps.
You know, merchants, you know, are going to be a huge source of information and news, and they're traveling by caravan or by ship. Right. So this is how a lot of the information is going to disseminate. And again, right, what kind of people are going to be drawn to being, you know, in a caravan or sailing a ship? They're probably people that are more likely to embellish, I think. Yeah. You know, they're more adventurous. They're going to be exposed to all these different cultures, and who's to say they're going to get it right?
I mean, when you think about even our culture, like in the, you know, turn of the 1900s, like how many wars, like battles happen after the treaty had been signed because they didn't get the fucking memo, right? Like,
we're still at war.
Yeah, like they're still fighting because they don't know that they're not still fighting, and that's just of the 19th century where, like, you know, we had some planes and ships and things like that. So.
And now this stuff really just applies if you're playing like a Eurocentric game, you know, based off of, you know, real world medieval times. Again, like if you're playing a higher magic world, then yeah, that's going to change things as well. And
certainly if you're playing like a modern sci-fi, all this goes out the window because you have access to all this information.
Unless the internet gets shut down by EMPs.
Yeah,
no.
That is true.
Everybody is stupid brainless people then.
Like, you know, like there's Ebron, right? So Ebron is a setting where they actually have newspapers and journalism.
It's really the
it's
the exception to all these discussions.
But I feel like, you know, most of the games we're playing in your Forgotten Realms, your Greyhawk, your Homebrews, your Dragonlance, you know, unless you're in a large metropolitan area, you know, the chances of being able to read for most people is like zero. There's even in those culture centers, it's still not like they had public schools.
It's probably the well-heeled that are going to have access to those things.
You know, you might know more as a peasant in the city just because you hear more gossip. It doesn't mean,
and it's not always correct.
It doesn't mean it's correct, and it doesn't mean it's like this day and age, right? People like to say that we're getting stupider, and it's not necessarily true. We know more than we've ever known. It may not be about relevant stuff. It might be about baseball
or celebrities
or celebrity. Yeah, exactly. Well, it'd be no different. It's whatever is going to be interesting to those people.
I would say, rather than stupid, like more stupid, I would say that people are their knowledge base might be getting bigger, but their competency at using that properly is going down, comparatively speaking. Like a person that was illiterate in the 1300s still knew a lot about crops and seasons if they're an agrarian society. They knew their stuff. It was like very experiential.
Expertise.
So they had expertise in what they had experienced. So, but now we're like way out, and
we're spread very thin.
I could draw you a map of the United States, but how useful is that? You know.
Well, here's the thing, right? When you look at it that way, when you put it that way, the thing is, you had to spend so much time surviving. That's all you could learn. That's all you could do. There wasn't free time, right? Now people don't have to survive the way they did.
That's true.
You know, you have a job, you get paid, you buy the stuff that you need. You're not sewing your own clothes, you're not growing your own food, you're not hunting.
The vast majority of us, at least, yeah.
Well, even those things that people are doing, a lot of them are now done almost like leisure activities.
Yeah.
You know, there is, that's one of the problems I think the world has, is we don't have as many farmers as we used to. We don't grow as much food as we used to. You know, so that there's the difference too. Like,
we have gotten more efficient at farming and land usage and things like that too.
So we don't have to know these things that would be considered more valuable information because it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's obsolete to us. And if I really needed to know it, I can go on my phone, right? That fits in my pocket, and I can find out the information.
EMPs.
Well,
that is true.
That's how you start the post-apocalyptic game.
So, I mean, that being said, there was a thing in the comments section of like the ranger being very competent about knowing about monsters. Yeah, sure, locally to like maybe the 6 or 10 mile radius that he might patrol, but monsters like a continent over that are foreign to him, he's not going to know anything about because he's not going to have access to that information. So you might be an expert, like a ranger would be expert in the terrain that's immediately around them, but that's about it. Like there was a thing, there's this TechCrunch article that gets cited from some things that I check out, but it was written in like 2010. Basically said that the entire history of things that had been written down and transcribed up until 2003 is replicated now in just data, in raw data, every 48 hours. So now it might not be like important things, but just like by raw bytes of information, every 48 hours we've duplicated that. And this article is from 2010. So it could be every 24 hours now. But some of this is like
12 hours.
Yeah, I mean, some of this is like bullshit, like tweets and like photographs, Instagram and things like that.
Kim Kardashian's ass breaking the internet.
Breaking the internet, and Bob's your uncle. But so that's the thing to consider is like we have so much embarrassingly amount of access to information, but also too we're almost like deluged by so much stuff that it's hard to moderate what's vital and important and necessary and what's just like noise.
Right, going back to the ranger example, like that ranger may be better at going to someplace he hasn't been before and seeing a monster or an animal or a beast-like creature and analyzing what its capabilities are based on its physiology, based on what he understands from the things he is familiar with.
Yeah.
But he isn't automatically going to know what it is. And if it does something weird, like spits acid, all of a sudden, like...
That's thrown off. Or like an Umber Hawk's confusion gaze. If you've never had any experience of looking into this thing's face and like, oh, I just want to go wander off here, even though this thing's trying to eat me or my friends, like, yeah, aberrations are a perfect example of they're weird, they're aberrant, you're not experienced with them.
Or any kind of magical creature. You know, it used to be magical beasts of previous editions. This edition, it's monstrosities. They're going to have strange and weird abilities, which you may be able to look at and go, oh, well, it kind of looks like this, but that actual information you actually have may actually throw you off more than it helps you, because you're going to see a Gorgon, you know, not the Medusa, but the bull creature, and go, oh, it's just like a bull made out of iron. They have a bad temper. You know, I don't want it to gore me. But what you don't understand, the real problem is you don't want it to breathe on you because it will turn you to stone. So, you know, so there's always going to be things like that that are going to come up. So the question is, how do you guys deal with it in your game? Do you just modernize everything and not worry about it? Do you try to stay true to a Eurocentric medieval times, the Dark Ages, whatever? Let us know in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can patronize us in a good way over on Patreon.
You can follow some of that useless data over on Instagram.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.
There's knowledge to the vastness that we have today.
Right, yeah.
And intelligence doesn't necessarily mean that you utilize that intelligence. So if you have a high intelligence, it doesn't mean it's all full of a whole bunch of things that nowadays people just learn in school.
Well, you don't have access to information the way you do now.
So limit on access.
So there's three factors we're going to look at, right? So we're going to look at literacy, the transmission of information, and travel.
Right.
Essentially.
All those are important. So, like, in many cultures, like way back when, if we're talking about a pseudo-medieval...
We also did another one talking about the gaming experience versus experiencing the game. So a lot of different things that come up. Mike Gould weighed in on a bunch of things. Boris Stremlin, a bunch of other people.
Ranger Roy, yeah, amongst others. Yeah.
Amongst others. And so the gist of it is, what does your character actually know? Even like during that one video, me and Ryan kind of disagreed on some things. And that just is like how much a character will know. Because you can't really equate your player character. Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with these nerds.
Nathan Nerdarchy.
Nerdarchy Ryan.
And today we're going to go over 3 reasons why your character doesn't know that. Jump down the description below where you can find Nerdarchy, the newsletter, game weekly tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy. So we had a couple of videos that kind of lead to this video, right? We did one...
It all came down to this.
It all came down to this. We did one video basically with dragons and wizards, why your castle is useless. We'd asked the question.
Medieval Europe, like 1,000 to 1,300. You're looking at like 20% max.
No, you know, forget about that, right? Even if you were happen to be literate, right? Someone taught you letters. The chances are that you actually had things to read are even more rare, because there wasn't a printing press. You didn't have the internet. Yeah. You couldn't just type something out and hit print.
Some mofo had to hand copy another book that was there. Oh, go ahead.
Like, they started religions just so they could put a bunch of monks in a room with books copying them.
But like, do this. Well, they chained book.
Period. Most people weren't literate. So it's kind of special that it's assumed that your adventurer is literate, right? Like, that's a very... Deal. I mean, if you go into Dark Sun, like, I mean, if you're playing a pure version of that game, like, everyone but a few characters are illiterate in that game world.
Don't you have to take... You had to take...
Yeah, in old versions, right? You had to choose... take literacy. Like, you expended resources to be literate in that game.
It was a proficiency.
Unless you were a Templar or a wizard.
Yeah, and I was looking at some information. It was like, you know, it was... You can safely say, like, 20% or less. If you're not talking about the Renaissance, but before that, like